One Piece has many positives to take from its over 20 long year legacy, but movies are not one of them. At the best of times, they're fun, entertaining popcorn flicks that see our favorite characters in cool scenarios, while other times, they are retreads or recycled from the main series, extended and made into either snorefests or annoying material. So don't expect those kinds of films to make it onto the list itself. Instead, I want to look at the films that all around tell the best story you can get from a franchise like this. It was definitely an experience having to rewatch some of the films in question, and I got away from it all with some surprising favorites. So let's go back to the movies with the top 10 One Piece films, starting with
Number 10.
It's not really a pirate movie without a treasure hunt, but it could have used a little bit more of John Silver's charisma. This is the first One Piece movie to come out on the big screen, and I'm more liking it to a short than a feature-length film. The first 3 movies released were all double features and clock in at around 40 to 50 minute runtimes. Too bad it didn't have a compelling pirate story, nor a relatable antagonist. The film stars Luffy, Zoro, Nami, and Usopp as they hunt for the legendary treasure of Captain Wunan, who buried his treasure on his home base decades ago. But another pirate also on the hunt is El Dorado, a gold fanatic on the hunt for the treasure to add to his decor. A young child accompanies the Straw Hats on their adventure alongside his grandfather, as the group of treasure hunters begin to discover the secrets behind Wunan's past. There is really not a ton to take out of this film aside from the bare-bones storyline. Plot is boring, the villains are forgettable, and the action, despite its animation, aren't anything to write home about. However, with all that said, it's got a place on the list because of its humor and a fairly well-told One Piece moral. There are several jokes that definitely got a laugh out of me, like with Luffy and Zoro's antics with the grandfather or when they're introducing themselves to El Dorado, and the resolution of the film isn't a fresh idea the series hasn't done before, but it does teach a lesson that your goals in life aren't always set in stone, and that happiness can be found in the more mundane life choices. Considering this film is very short and is a dime a dozen pirate story, it holds up for its comedy, decent action, and a story that does its job well enough to warrant a time watching it. Also, keep an eye on some of these kid characters on this list. You're going to be seeing a lot more of that trope.
Number 9.
Wait, this made the list? The one where the animators emphasize the bounce house physics of Nami's cleavage? The one that many horny artists had free market hands in creating porn of? This movie made the fucking list? Yes! Ah, jeez, I gotta defend myself on this, don't I? Okay, the giant mechanical soldier of Karakuri was such a weird film to sit through. Don't believe me? Then listen to what I gotta say about the synopsis of this plot. The beginning of the movie starts out as Luffy and the Straw Hats discover a chest in the wreck of a pirate ship, and when they open it up, an old lady in a Komodo pops out. The woman then describes the legend of the Golden Crown and wants to reward the pirates with it in exchange for safe passage back to her home island, Mecha Island, which, if you guessed it, is a normal fishing village that just so happens to also have mechanical creations created by the old woman's son, Ratchet. Ratchet is also after the crown, and discovering Luffy's blind luck and finding the hidden passages in the island's song, joins Luffy's group as they find the mystery of the Golden Crown. Asking me to describe how this movie's plot progresses is about as coherent as injecting methanol to a rabbit to make it do somersaults in the stratosphere. It goes from an escort mission to a treasure hunt on a flip of a dime, and then steamrolls all that for a rescue operation as the island is actually on the back of a turtle, and then the main bad guy is going to use that said turtle to take over the world. Even for One Piece, a strange series about magical fruits and talking reindeers, this is quite the leap in reality. But to its credit, it was probably by design. It questions a lot about the cliches surrounding the treasure hunt storylines and explores sides of characters that we don't usually see in the actual series. That Luffy does have dumb luck and was integral in solving so many of the riddles around the island, though it did get a bit ridiculous to see him solve every single mystery, unlike Robin, whose only roles in these films seems to be just the exposition dump. The animation is some of the best of all the movies, with special attention going towards its more titillating enhancements. While it is such a strange and misguided movie in execution, and the villain is another throwaway character, it never bored me like some other does in the franchise, and for that I at least have to give it an award for effort. Though I think the title seems a bit misleading. How about The Giant Mechanical Turtle, or Adventures on Mecha Island, or The Horny Island of Dr. Maroon?
Number 8.
Clockwork Island Adventure is the superior follow-up to the first movie, and while still having the same problems like other early One Piece films, it at least is more engaging and interesting compared with the others on this list. The plot, however, nothing special. The Going Merry is taken by an unknown individual, and the Straw Hats have to journey to Clockwork Island to get their ship and their stuff back. They meet a pair of thieves along the way, but are suddenly ambushed by the Trump Pirates, who then take Nami to their boss as a bride. They are coincidentally enough on the same exact island that they're heading towards, as the Straw Hats battle their way through the Trump army to reclaim their ship, stop Bear King's plans, and hopefully save the island. Much like the first film, the storyline is predictable and the villains, while more entertaining than the last ones, are still pretty flat. The best aspects of the film are the pair of thieving brothers that have a role in the story, the setup of the Straw Hats having their own powers cut in half due to their essential supplies being on the Going Merry, and even the animation, though at times can be a bit choppy during several fight scenes. It makes real good work of its short length, and while not emotionally resonant, it makes up for it with its pacing, comedy, and its One Piece charm. Not an absolute masterpiece, but as a short feature film, I'd definitely watch it again, just to see Luffy perform attempted murder on his crewmates.
なあ、ところで俺の仲間どこだ？
今お前が吹っ飛ばしたんだよ。
Number 7.
Time to take out the tissues, folks, because like the original, this one might make you cry. The second and hopefully last movie recapping one of the most heartwarming stories in the series run, the episode of Chopper, Bloom and Winter Miracle Sakura. Unlike the other movie that did an abridged version of the Alabasta arc, this one is a what-if scenario of Chopper joining the crew later in the Grand Line. Robin and Frankie replace Vivi and Karu and have their own place in the plot, which goes by a pretty similar beat to the original. We get to essentially rewatch the exact same story, but told in a different way with more action and humor that makes its retelling more of a fit for feature length. Chopper's backstory is still as good as the first time reading it, and its animation, though looking pretty flawed in several scenes, does make up for it with its fights and emotional icebreakers. But its biggest strength can also be its greatest weakness. It doesn't have quite the amount of contrivances like the Alabasta film, but it still can be frustrating when many sequences that were in the original are either cut or given less detail. Wapple's brother is more of a plot device added to raise the stakes in the film, and the time given to him would have worked better for Wapple, who most certainly needs it as he isn't a very popular villain in the One Piece canon. The Hero Look flashback takes up over half of the film's length, and while I enjoyed this flashback and got a bit teary-eyed in the sentimental moments, I did find it to drag the film a little bit too much. And like all the other One Piece episode movies and specials, there is almost no point in watching these films unless it's for nostalgia. However, it is still the best retelling of a classic story, and while not comparable to the original version, it at least added to it instead of being just a shot-for-shot remake. Although I would love to see a version of Dr. Heroic accidentally killing a patient and leaving a child fatherless. Yeah, the manga version is pretty fucked up.
Number 6.
One Piece Endgame seems like a far more accurate title when you think about it. A blockbuster event where all of the most popular and badass characters come together to tackle the biggest challenge yet, trying to find the point in this. Yeah, I'm not sure if people really love this movie or not, but it at least gives one camp of the One Piece fandom what they wanted. For everyone else though, it was okay. The Straw Hats arrive at a pirate festival where all pirates, young and old, gather to hopefully acquire the once-lost eternal pose to Laftel, or Raftel as it used to be translated. However, it was all orchestrated by a portly event organizer and his partner in crime, Douglas D. Bullitt, to gather the strongest pirates in the New World and claim the title of Pirate King by defeating them. And thus, the entire film is dedicated for almost 2/3 with nothing but giant characters punching, screaming, and that's about it. The big thing that was advertised and heavily pushed into the film was his cameos of previous One Piece villains and side characters. Some like Smoker, Crocodile, Law, and Buggy have significant roles in the feature, while others are more just brief appearances with not much fanfare. It is a cool way to reminisce on how many great characters have been throughout the 20 years of the series run, but they don't do much aside from just being there. And the other big thing is the action, which has to be the most arm-pumping, adrenaline-filled theater experience you'll ever witness, which I wouldn't know since it didn't really play in my local cinema. So in some regards, I only saw it from the comforts of my own couch, and as such, I treat it more like an event movie than a smartly written, satisfactory narrative. Like the Avengers movies, there is no problem enjoying the film for what it is, but it also has no substance. Bullet is just a musclehead, and despite having some really good fight scenes, he's by far the most boring villain in any One Piece film. Even other film villains that are worse than him actually had at least one or two remnants of personality than this dreadlock steroid jack gym junkie. The story is nowhere to be found, and it suffers the exact same problems that most event films have. Okay, maybe I'm being a little bit harsh on a movie that wasn't trying to be more than it was, and despite my attempts to twist the knife into it, I wasn't at all bored by it. It was still cool for the most part, and while it definitely could have used more character or temperament in its course, it nevertheless promised and delivered on that anniversary craze. If you love One Piece for the action, then this film is a testament to that. But if you, like me, wanted to see more story, exploration, and world building like many other One Piece contemporaries, then you might want to view this stampede from a distance. And besides, we already had a grand pirate competition years prior, and trust me, you'll probably like it better than this one.
Number 5.
Now we're moving into the good shit. Dead End Adventure was the very first movie to warrant the label of a feature film, and what it delivered on was so much more than this double features. It had good action, a good story, and some really cool side characters. It's certainly the kind of One Piece movie I've been waiting for, and while it's not exactly perfecto, it's one I still love to watch whenever I'm in the yo-ho-ho feeling. The Straw Hats are short on cash per usual and decide to enter into the annual Dead End Race, a pirate-only competition where they race to the finish line for a huge cash reward. One of the competitors is the infamous Gaspard, a former Marine who ruthlessly plays with opponents for his own entertainment and has a firm grasp on the race itself. He is pursued by not only his former organization, but also Shiraya Baskud, a bounty hunter with a tragic connection to Gaspard. It's murder. It is always murder. Lots of twists and tons of high-sea action takes place as the crew of the Going Merry must maneuver not just the weather of the Grand Line, but also the Gaspard pirates to cross the finish line. So before we begin highlighting the pros of the film, it is fair to point out the problems first. Gaspard is what I consider to be Crocodile, but if he wore a marine coat. He's cruel, arrogant, and extremely power-hungry, but pretty one-dimensional as a villain can get. Despite the power of turning into liquid candy to be interesting, he has nothing else to offer aside from being just a giant figure for Luffy to punch. And where Crocodile was fresh and entertaining in his debut, Gaspard is an inferior version of that great villain. But looking over that blunder and a couple of conveniences in the plot, the rest is really admirable. The idea of a pirate-only race is wholly unique to the setting, as we're introduced to the concept in a breathtaking way as our main characters find a secret pirate base inside the mountains. And on top of just the adventure aspect being so wild and creative, the new characters are also just as fun. Shiraya is essentially an ace character with a Kill Bill design, but with a cool fighting style and backstory to supplement the stakes of the story. It even has a likable child character that does well in the role of a desperate assistant trying to save their mentor's life. But the biggest positive of the film has to be the action set pieces. The beginning bar fight with Luffy and Shiraya has to be the most dynamic action sequence in the whole One Piece film catalog, and the third act battles against Gaspard are thrilling to watch. It's a film that Stampede could have been if it didn't go so over the top in its execution. If it wasn't for the villain being too hard of a candy to swallow, and the storyline not needing to divulge into typical One Piece cliches, then this would have made my top 3. But as it stands, it's the bare minimum I believe all One Piece films should be on.
Number 4.
If you weren't angry at me putting Stampede out of the top 5, I can't imagine how you will feel with this film out of the top 3. When ranking the next 3 films, it was very difficult for me to find out which one was better since I find them all to be just as good or even better than the others in many subjects. However, for the sake of competition, I tried to find the ones that told their piratical stories better. And while Strong World might be lower than the others for reasons I'll get into, it's still a really good One Piece movie. The film stars a villain hinted by Oda to have been the only other person besides Luffy to ever escape the underwater prison of Impel Down, Shiki the Golden Lion. The Straw has discovered that the East Blue is being targeted by an unknown threat, and because most of them are from that part of the sea, make the decision to go back home and protect it. However, they're intercepted by Shiki and are brought to his floating island home of Merville. He takes Nami as his navigator and uses his power of controlling inanimate objects to drop the Straw Hats onto the floating islands below. It turns out, unsurprisingly, that Shiki is the one responsible for the East Blue attacks, and plans to use the wild and ferocious animals on the island to rampage across that ocean and conquer it for his own. So the Straw Hats must get back together once more, save Nami, and stop Shiki's conquest. As the first film overlooked by Ichiro Oda himself, this sparks more familiarity to One Piece than the other films. Its humor, its designs, and even the layout and structure of its environments are so much like the manga. The villain of Shiki is definitely a more entertaining villain than the previous movie antagonists, and his power is overwhelming to say the least. Even the Straw Hats feel like themselves, with very little deviations from their character personalities, with special attention going towards Nami, who is the most active character and the one with the most screen time. It exemplifies why she is such a beloved character in her dedication and love for the crew, and how she can definitely add necessary stakes to the story. The animation on top of all that is also incredible, with some great attention to details of the environments, character designs, and backgrounds. Now, the reasons why this film is not on the podium are very minor, and that comes down to many drops in the engagement level. The middle half is where things tend to falter, and there are characters in the main cast that don't have as much time to shine like the others. And while I praise the villain for being a step in the right direction, he is just another goofy One Piece villain with nothing else going for him, aside from some pretty forced jokes. Also, the final fight might be a bit underwhelming as Shiki is defeated in probably the most unsatisfying way possible, and ends with a roar, but no echo. Despite that, if you weren't satisfied with how the other One Piece films treated its settings and world building, this one is certainly a stronger world to get lost in.
Number 3.
I've been racking hard on the quality of the villains in these movies, and just when I was losing all hope, a hero named Zed entered the picture. One Piece villain Zed is a movie all about, well, Zed, a former Marine Admiral who wants to use the MacGuffins known as Dynastones to take out the pirates of the New World. And everyone with him. Yeah, not a great plan. The Straw Hats one day rescue him on the high seas, and he in return attempts to kill them, entangling the Straw Hats into the plot. So now Luffy and the gang have to stop Zed from destroying the New World with help from an unlikely ally. The best element of this film is of course centered around our villain, and after movies of mediocre and lame antagonists, it was refreshing to get a complex and interesting character such as him. His design is intimidating, his power exceeds our main hero in terms of ferocity, and his personality is fascinating. He's essentially an old dog in search of death, and his ideology is toxic not only to the detriment of his pupils, but to the entire ocean. One Piece has always viewed the Navy as an antagonistic force, but here we see more of their complexity and nuance. There are certainly bad figures in the Corps that corrupt and abuse their power, but you also get a sense that these are real people who are just trying to do what's right. It's just in Zed's case that he has a one-track mind for annihilating the problem without any workarounds. Where One Piece always has a mix between wholesome and dramatic, this is certainly a more slow and engaging feature. That means it digests its characters' motivations and feelings more naturally, and doesn't just throw us into uncharted waters like it's afraid we'll be bored. However, this can also be where the film can drag its feet at times. While Zed is given a ton of focus and attention to, our main heroes are more there to move the plot along. It can also be quite jam-packed with relevant exposition and character dialogue. It's a problem a lot of franchise films have when the typical movie audience needs context for several things, so it does steer away the elements that work for the film's narrative. But that can just be indicative of a movie based on a popular series that wants to get new fans into it, and I only wanted to mention it for the sake of objective criticism. While the second act is a bit boring and the side characters are forgettable, the ending is where it all comes together. Luffy and Zed's final fight has to be the most brutal and breathtaking action scene in all of the One Piece films, and yeah, it definitely got a tear in my eye watching it all come together near the end. Out of all the films observed by Oda, this is one that many fans hold very dear to their hearts. The action is well directed and animated, it has a good ending that ties all unanswered questions, and no surprise here, the villain is simply great to watch. And oh, the best part! Avril Lavigne sings early 2000s cover songs. Hey, it could be worse. It could have been Hello Kitty.
Number 2.
Okay, who doesn't love a film about punching capitalism in the face? One Piece Film Gold is the current One Piece movie under Oda's supervision and is personally the best one of the three, to an extent. While its villain wasn't as strong as Film Z's was, nor has a unique premise as Strong World, what I find this film to achieve more in is having a very good story, some of the best animation the movie's ever had, and a more coherent direction. Each event builds to the final act, as it dabbles in the many things that make One Piece so good. Instead of being taken into the plot like the other films, the crew opts to visit the floating casino metropolis known as Grand Tesoro. What would happen if you mixed Las Vegas, Mar-a-Lago, and Atlantic City into an island? It is ruled by Gil Tesoro, a luxurious proprietor and con man who tricks the Straw Hats into accumulating debts and takes Zoro as a hostage. With Tesoro's power to control gold, the Straw Hats have no choice but to steal Tesoro's stash of treasure inside his maximum security vault. With the help of Nami's former partner in crime, Karina, it's a race against the clock to save Zoro from Tesoro's golden fist. Now, there are a few problems that need to be addressed, such as the villain. Granted, he's not a bad antagonist, mind you. He's cunning, manipulative, and egocentric to a fault. But those are also the same qualities of Doflamingo, and if you know anything about the similar problem with Gaspar from Dead End Adventure, you know that these definitely hurt Tesoro as an antagonist. However, he does help along with the film's message of overcoming the rigged game of life and striving for betterment and revolution. The cameos of certain fan-favorite characters are also a little bit on the forced side. While not as arduous as Stampede, the cameos don't really add much to the story aside from CP0 and the Revolutionaries. But taking out the minor problems and nitpicks, this film has many positives going for it than against. The idea of One Piece doing Ocean's 11 or Mission Impossible is a fresh new take. From using spy tools and gadgets to pulling the rug time and time again for added twists, it's a movie that certainly gets creative with the concepts. There are a lot of memorable scenes in the movie, like the wacky races Luffy and the gang take charge in, or when they're putting their heist together. Each Straw Hat has a purpose in the film, and even Karina, who I was afraid to be a Nami clone, is entertaining in her own right. And truth be told, I even like the side villains. They all have funny quirks, they're used very well in the story, and have some really cool abilities, like the power to take away and give someone luck at their command, which on an island of gambling is super overpowered. Grand Tesoro is a great setting, there's a lot of variety in both comedy, suspense, and action to play around with, and in my view, is the most evenly paced film of the lot. All the way to its climactic finish, the film is like watching a nice choreographed stage show, escalating the narrative beats to fit the tone and pace with very little dips in between. The music is great, the animation is stellar, the premise is appealing, and while not as strong in the character department, it does feel like it takes the best of all the movies and mixes it into one. This movie simply was a gold splash. Before we get to number 1, let's look at the dishonorable mentions.
Number 1.
I'm scared of flowers now, guys. This thing, no joke, scared the shit out of me. I won't reveal too much, but for the love of God, fuck this flower. Oh, and Baron of Matsuri and the Secret Island. It's the best One Piece film, so sue me. This placement might be a bit weird, especially after I highly praised the previous One Piece movies of being more One Piece than the others. This film was very different in its cast, storyline, themes, and all-around tone. But that's why it's better than the rest. That's in part due to its talented artists, very talented voiceover cast, and especially the director, Mamoru Hosoda. Before working on favorites such as Wolf's Children, The Girl Who Left Through Time, and Summer Wars, Hosoda's first major motion picture was this film, and he takes these wonderful characters and has a masochistic time in putting them into the darkest pits the series has ever seen on screen. But at the start of the film, it's very base One Piece. The crew are invited to an island resort run by the Baron himself, but get tricked into competing in challenges in order to stay on the island. While challenges go on, the crew starts to split themselves up, either from conflict or a desire to explore, mysteries of the island pop up, and the answer to said mysteries might lead to their utter destruction as a family. Familial bonds are a reoccurring theme in many of Hosoda's works, and since one of One Piece's major themes in the narrative is the bonds of friendship, it's safe to say Hosoda was the right person to direct this movie. The animation is very aligned with others in his library, loose and playful, but can also hold disturbing undertones and heavy imagery. The backgrounds, character designs, and lighting are simply gorgeous to look at, and it gets even better when it eventually shifts into horror, emphasizing the dread and fear as the strats are targeted one by the Baron himself. One Piece isn't far from dabbling into heavy topics, but some of the subject matter in this film are quite unique for a series that's aimed for a younger audience. Isolation, survivor's guilt, suicide are just a few hand-picked from the movie, and the Baron works very well as the film's main antagonist. A man who takes great attention and care for his crew like a family, even to a level of worshipping them like idols. His grim outlook on life and constant belittling of Luffy's efforts overshadows his playful personality by the film's third act. But it's not just about the main villain, there are also the many victims of the island, including a chaplain-looking pirate captain, and even an actual family unit, who develop over the course of the movie and take on very human traits to make them more than just a healthy distraction. But the best part of the movie is the character relationships, as each of the strats are presented as way more grounded in reality than ever before. When they're happy, you can feel their joy. When they're angry, you can feel their hostility. Their dynamics are presented with very subtle attention to detail, as many of their falling outs aren't forced upon by the rush of the plot, but instead from a justified sense of miscommunication. Luffy is easily to blame for the morality of his crew, and takes it upon himself to correct his mistakes throughout the film's runtime. Outside of Water 7 or Marineford, we haven't seen the main protagonist be put to his limit psychologically. There is sorrow and desperation all around, but at the same time, a glimmer of hope. Perseverance and the will to continue are the solutions to the conflict of the film, and despite One Piece's reliance on violence to solve its problems, it takes the words and motivations of others to win over the horror in the end. This film is a marvel in how creative-minded people can take significant icons and find new ground for exploration. It's not just great by One Piece standards, it's great by film standards. From beginning to end, Baron Omatsuri and the Secret Island went places no One Piece property will ever go to, and encapsulated the hidden potential of going against the norm. Scary flowers and terrifying imagery aside, this film is simply a must-watch for new fans, old fans, and especially the general public. Stop and smell the lilies, guys, because it is a sensational experience. Just, don't smell this one. And thus, my journey through the One Piece films comes to an end. But let me know what your favorite One Piece films are in the comment section below. Subscribe for more videos coming soon, because I've only reached the base of what One Piece has to offer. It's your Bra Man, signing off.